My son emptied our accounts and vanished with his criminal girlfriend. Every penny I'd saved from 40 years of teaching gone overnight. The house felt hollow, every photo on the wall a lie. But the worst part wasn't the money. It was realizing the boy I raised had turned into someone I couldn't recognize. For 3 nights I couldn't sleep, wondering where I went wrong. Then my 13-year-old grandson looked up from his laptop calm as the storm outside and said, "Grandma, don't worry." I handled it. I didn't understand what he meant until days later my phone rang and on the other end was my son screaming, "Mom, someone's destroying my life." That was the moment I realized the truth. Justice doesn't always wear a badge. Sometimes it looks like a quiet child who refuses to let evil win. Before I share my story, I want to know you are here with me. Just say listening in the comments or tell me where you are. I love hearing how far my story reach. Sometimes even the smallest connection can make a story feel heard. Thank you. And now, here's my story. If my words move you, please subscribe to our channel, Never Too Old. We tell stories that remind the world it's never too late to fight back, to heal, or to rise again. My name is Marigold Hart, and this is how I learned that even at 62, a broken heart can still lead to justice. Autumn air pushed off the river and into our old Victorian, like a damp hand carrying the sour bite of marsh and the faint metal tang of rain, and I was at the ironing board pressing Jasper's uniform shirt when the suitcase hit the upstairs floor. One hard thud, clean as a gunshot, so wrong it shook the starch out of my hands. The grandfather clock stalled for a heartbeat, and I knew the way a teacher knows when a lie is walking down the hall toward her, that something in this house had slipped its hinge. I climbed the creaking stairs, the runner snagging my heel, and Thatcher's door stood open like a warning, his black roller bag yawning on the bed, clothes shoved in without a fold, his work laptop open on the unmade sheets, blue light on rumpled cotton, a row of tabs glowing bank portals I recognized by their colors, and there in the middle, a neat white label, Harborstone. The cursor blinked in a log inbox where someone had started typing L1010 and stopped midway. On the desk, a crumpled utility bill with my name and address, the last 4 of my Social Security underlined twice in blue ink as if someone had been memorizing me. I said his name. He didn't look up. Business trip, Mom, and it was almost funny because we both knew his job doesn't send him anywhere. He shoved his toiletries into a side pocket and his elbow clipped the framed photo of Lenore, holding newborn Jasper. The glass cracked and spidered and slid out the picture. Skidding face up on the floor, Thatcher stepped over his dead wife's smile like it was packing paper. I heard my voice change low and calm, the way you talk to a kid. After a fire drill, "Where are you going?" And he said, "I need to breathe." Like family was a closed room and we'd stolen his air downstairs. The clock started again. Tick, 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 too loud. "Talk to me first," I said. "We can fix this," and he didn't even pretend to try. "You and Jasper are fine without me." He hauled the zipper shut, the sound of something ending. "He's better off with you anyway." The words hit in the soft places I keep hidden. I reached for his sleeve, and he peeled away a stranger wearing my boy's face, and for a second I saw every version of him. First steps. First suspension, first paycheck folded into this man, who wouldn't meet my eyes. I heard the front door in my head before he touched it, and I almost called after him, and then I didn't, because I remembered what happens when you chase someone who's already running, you both end up lost. I stood in the doorway breathing glass and lemon starch, and the ghost of his cologne while downstairs, a pencil scratched Jasper doing algebra, like the world hadn't shifted a degree. When I came back down, he looked from the suitcase to me, those steady brown eyes that never flinch. "Is he leaving?" And I said yes, and the house changed shape. The rooms getting bigger around the empty. The door opened, October air, slid in, and then it was shut and the Honda was gone and the clock would not stop telling us the time I set the iron upright. I picked the photo out of the frame and brushed off the grit. I didn't fix the glass, I wanted the crack to stay. Jasper closed his textbook with the same care he uses for everything that matters, Grandma. He said, quiet, like prayer, "Don't worry, let me check," and I almost told him no, because adults are supposed to carry the burning ends. But he was already moving, already collecting details with those careful eyes. Harbor Stone on a screen upstairs. L, 2010, in a half-filled box. My SSN marked on a bill like a target. And I could feel the hop between my ribs settle the way it does when a plan sits down in the chair across from fear. I didn't call Thatcher. I didn't run into the street. I set the broken frame on the mantel and told the clock to hush it. Didn't, but I said it anyway. We'll see what the truth is. I told the room, and the room, for the first time that day, listened. The first night without Thatcher, the house breathed too loud. Pipes ticking floorboards, answering back. And sometime after midnight, the soft, steady clatter of keys began in Jasper's room. I stood outside his door and knocked once, and he said, "Come in," without looking away from the screen. The desk lamp threw a circle of warm light over a careful battlefield laptop. Legal pad, a cheap printer humming neat stacks of blank envelopes waiting for names. He slid the laptop toward me. Just enough for me to see the email login page already filled. Username, password, Lenore 2010. And my breath snagged. Because he hadn't broken anything, he'd just walked through a door. Someone left open the inbox bloomed with bank alerts and security notice subject lines. Thatcher never deleted. Jasper moved through them like he'd practiced on 100 puzzle boxes. He opened the savings account first because that's where I keep my fear. And there it was in black and digital, $12. The number sat there small and obscene, past transactions unspooled, little withdrawals every week, then bigger ones, the pattern of a siphon. He pulled the college fund next, and my throat burned hot because the balance was zero, and I could still hear the day Lenore and I set it up, the promise we made to a sleeping baby about futures and doors. Jasper clicked a folder labeled Applications, and there were 2 PDFs I didn't recognize with my name typed so clean it made me dizzy. A $30,000 personal loan with my information, and a spiky electronic signature that looked enough like mine to hurt a $15,000 credit card with Jasper's Social Security, and his age listed as 25. He used your numbers, I said, but what I meant was he used me, used us. And shame rose like heat, because the betrayal felt physical. I pressed my palms on the desk to steady them, and Jasper, steady as a metronome, said, "It's okay. I can see the path." He made a folder on the desktop and named it Evidence like it was a spell and started pouring the truth into it. Screenshots stamped with timestamps, bank transfers labeled P2P landing first in T. Read and then hopping to accounts. I didn't know side by side with the exact times the security emails pinged. Thatcher's inbox. He printed a log of recent sign-ins and circled 2 lines in pencil. "See these," he said, and I did IP addresses that matched our own home network, the last octets, familiar like a zip code, and beside them, the device ID he pointed to. That's Dad's laptop, MAC address, the same one upstairs, and the room tightened around the fact that this hadn't been a panic grab on his way out. It had been a plan built at our kitchen table with our Wi-Fi. He drew a timeline on the legal pad because paper still makes things true. 4 months of slow bleed the bump. When he figured out how to move it faster, the day a new name appeared in the emails, Harborstone and Jasper clicked through a thread with auto-forward rules that shunted bank notices to a private folder tagged V. Cross. He didn't open anything locked. He kept saying that out loud, like he needed me to hear it. I'm not breaking in. I'm just documenting the things he and his friend left in the open. He went back to the drafts folder, and there sat a message titled Jacksonville Rental Inquiry with a body that read like a new life move-in. Dates cash preference. A request not to run credit until we're settled. He printed it and slid it under the paperclip on the timeline. "Tomorrow I'll file fraud alerts and freeze our credit." He said, "I'll ping the banks and document everything." And the child I raised sounded like a case officer. He opened a new spreadsheet and logged the transfers and the IPs and the confirmations, and then exported every screenshot with a little clock stamp in the corner because one day someone would care about the minute and the second. I looked at the $12 again and the zero and the shape of my name, where it didn't belong. And something in me that had been pacing finally sat down. Sorrow still there, anger braided through it, and under both a thin wire of resolve. All right, I said the two words heavier than some vows you lead. I'll follow. He nodded once and kept working. The printer spit out proof into my hands, and in the next room, the broken frame on the mantel caught the light of the street lamp and threw it back in a thin, bright blade. The house still breathed too loud, but now the sound had rhythm, the kind a person can walk to. The morning light felt thin, the kind that seeps through lace curtains without warming anything, and I woke to the smell of burnt coffee and the rustle of paper. Jasper sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by printed screenshots and sticky notes, a detective disguised as a boy. He'd already made a list of next steps in neat handwriting: library, court archives, letters to mail. We walked together to the public library downtown, the old brick one that smells of dust and citrus cleaner. Inside, every keyboard click echoed like a heartbeat. Jasper typed Viviana Cross Harborstone Financial into the search bar, and there she was, a smiling face in a corporate headshot, dark hair, eyes too confident. He pulled up her LinkedIn and matched the email domain in Thatcher's messages. "It's her," he said, quiet but certain. He searched deeper, tracing her name through public court databases, finding an old case file from Toledo, Ohio. Embezzlement, restitution, resignation, dismissed. The pattern of someone who never gets caught long enough to learn. When he printed the record, the librarian gave him a look, the kind reserved for people reading about crimes instead of novels. By noon, the heat outside felt heavy on my skin. We stopped by our neighbor Evelyn Porter's house, the widow who waters her porch plants every morning and waves when she sees us walk by. She was 82, sharp as a tack, but trusting. And when I told her I wanted to ask about her investments with Harborstone, she looked both embarrassed and relieved. "Oh, those," she said, shuffling through a drawer and pulling out her recent statements. The papers trembled slightly in her hands. "They still show growth, see? But my withdrawals haven't matched for months. They told me the market was adjusting." She pointed to the bottom line of each page, where in faint gray type it read, "Statement prepared by V. Cross." My stomach turned cold. Evelyn looked at me, eyes small and wet. "You think I've been tricked?" I took her hand, the skin paper thin but still warm. "I think you've been targeted," I said, "and we're going to do something about it." That afternoon, I drove to Harborstone's downtown office, a gleaming glass cube that looked sterile enough to hide anything. The receptionist smiled politely until I mentioned compliance department. Then she pointed me toward a white wall with a drop box labeled Client Concerns. I slipped our printed complaint inside a formal letter citing suspected identity theft and fraudulent manipulation by employee Viviana Cross, attached with bank screenshots, the emails between her and my son, the records from Evelyn's account, and Jasper's domain verification that showed the so-called investment portal was newly registered under an alias server in Florida. It felt like dropping a grenade down a well. At the post office, we mailed duplicates to the State Banking Commission certified. Jasper triple-checked the tracking numbers before sealing the envelope. On the drive home, we didn't talk much. He stared out the window, the city passing in slow motion. "You know what gets me, Grandma," he said finally. "She picks people like you, retired teachers, widows, the ones who still believe in trust." His voice didn't shake, but something in it hardened. "She doesn't steal just money. She steals dignity." That night, while I was washing dishes, my email pinged twice. One was an automated message from Harborstone employee suspended pending review. The other had no sender, no subject, just one sentence that made my hands tremble. "Stop digging. Some things aren't yours to uncover." I forwarded it to Jasper without a word. He read it, closed the laptop, and said, "That means we're right." When I went to bed, I couldn't sleep. The ceiling creaked like it was thinking. My mind replayed Evelyn's voice. They told me the market was adjusting. I imagined all the others like her who never even realized they were bleeding out in small transfers, each one smoothed over by a monthly statement that smiled back. Before I drifted into uneasy sleep, I heard Jasper in the next room printing again the hum of paper, sliding out steady and sure. The fight had found its shape now. It had a name, a face, and an address in Jacksonville, and we were no longer its prey. The rain started before midnight, slow at first, then heavy enough to drum against the windows. The house was dark except for the thin line of light under Jasper's door. I tried to sleep, but the tapping of keys kept pulling me awake. Finally, I gave up, wrapped my robe tight, and stood outside his room. He was sitting at the desk headset on eyes lit blue by the screen. "You're still up," I said softly. He didn't turn. "Almost done," he murmured. On his monitor, I saw rows of forms fraud alerts filed with Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, each stamped submitted. He clicked through them methodically, then opened a spreadsheet showing account freezes and pending disputes. "They can't use our information again," he said, "or anyone else's." He pulled up another window, a network map full of numbers and lines. "These are the paths she used to move the money. Viviana's not just helping Dad, she's part of something bigger." His fingers moved faster, tracing IP addresses back through mirrored servers. "Here," he said, tapping the screen. 3 shell accounts, all tied to Harborstone's network range. One of them, Port Savannah Invest LLC, doesn't exist outside of paperwork. It's a wash account. I couldn't follow all the jargon, but I understood enough my son hadn't just fallen for a woman. He'd joined a criminal machine. Jasper saved screenshots and email chain where Viviana wrote "delete the trace logs after wire," another invoice showing repeated transfers labeled consulting fees between her and Thatcher. In a captured internal report, a table listed client adjustments, and right there, my name, Evelyn's, and others. He compiled everything into a secure folder, compressed it, and addressed it to Harborstone's internal security team, with a title that felt both clinical and final: Unauthorized Data Breach Report, Employee Viviana Cross. He hit send. The cursor blinked once, and then a new window popped up on the screen blank except for 4 words in bold text. "We see you, kid." I stepped closer. "What is that?" He stared at it for a second, then shut the laptop lid gently. "It's them. Means they're scared." My pulse jumped. "Should we call someone?" He shook his head. "Not yet. They just wanted to remind us they're watching. Now they know we're watching back." An hour later, the landline rang. The sound was so sharp in the quiet that I flinched. I picked it up, half whispering, "Hello." A woman's voice, low and smooth, said, "Mrs. Hart, if you know what's good for you, stop sending those files." My mouth went dry. "Who is this?" The line went dead. Jasper was already beside me, phone in hand, recording the dial tone. "That's intimidation," he said flatly. "We can use it." I sat down at the kitchen table, feeling my pulse in my throat. For the first time, I realized how far this had gone. My grandson trading blows with adults who hid behind encrypted accounts. "You're just a boy," I said. "You shouldn't have to do this." He looked at me with those steady eyes that didn't belong to a child anymore. "Someone has to." The storm outside grew heavier, wind howling through the chimney. We sat together in the glow of the kitchen light, the air thick with static and fear. I poured 2 cups of tea because doing something normal was the only way I could breathe. At dawn, Jasper's email chimed again. He opened it slowly. Harborstone had issued a statement: "Employee Viviana Cross has been placed on leave pending investigation." I wanted to feel relief, but the next line stopped me cold. In my inbox right beneath it was a message from Thatcher's old email address. The subject read, "Delivery failed." The body was empty except for one automated sentence: "This account no longer exists." I stared at it for a long time. "He's covering his tracks," Jasper said quietly. The sun came up gray and tired. Rain slid down the windows like melted silver. I stood there watching it, thinking about the things that break quietly before they shatter trust-glass family. Jasper was already packing his backpack for school as if the night hadn't happened. "We've got them cornered," he said, slipping a USB drive into his pocket. "I just need one more connection." I asked him what kind of connection, but he didn't answer. He looked out the window instead, the rain streaking across his reflection, and said almost to himself, "The next IP hop points to a motel outside Jacksonville." I watched him walk to the door, calm, precise, unshaken, and I felt a strange mix of pride and dread. Somewhere in the noise of the storm, I heard Thatcher's voice from that day he left, "I need to breathe." Maybe this was how justice breathes, slow, quiet, inevitable. I didn't know it yet, but by the following night, the address Jasper found would echo through a police radio, and the circle that began with a suitcase hitting the floor would finally start to close. Saturday morning came bright and sharp, the kind of light that makes everything look cleaner than it really is. The house smelled like printer ink and coffee, and our dining table had disappeared beneath neat stacks of paper statements, screenshots, and yellow envelopes lined up like soldiers. Jasper sat cross-legged in front of his laptop, labeling folders and writing instructions in clear block letters. How to identify fake investment transactions, how to file a fraud claim, who to call if your account is compromised. His handwriting was calm, exact, and much older than his age. I printed the statements while he double-checked the totals, the hum of the printer, steady as a metronome. Around noon, I realized one of the names on his list, Evelyn Porter. My heart dropped. She'd already lost enough. "Include her file," I said. Jasper looked up, nodded once, and added Evelyn's statement to the growing pile. On the screen, he reopened the client portal Viviana used for her accounts, typed Viv 2018 into the password field, and the system opened without hesitation. Rows of accounts appeared, all tied to retirees, all with similar patterns, small regular withdrawals masked as market rebalancing. He scrolled silently, jaw tight. 17 profiles, he said, every one over 65. He exported the data, formatted it into evidence packets, and I started sealing envelopes. We split the stack into 3 groups and planned the drop-offs at different post offices. "They can trace mail routes," Jasper said, so we mixed them. The room felt electric, every sound too loud. As we were finishing, a car pulled up outside. The tires crunched on the gravel, and I caught a glimpse through the curtain, a woman with dark hair standing at the curb, her face partly hidden behind sunglasses. She didn't knock. She just watched the house for a few seconds, then turned and walked away. Mrs. Bonner from next door called across the fence a few minutes later. "She's been by twice this week," she said. "Looks familiar." My throat went dry. I'd seen her once before in the footage from the doorbell camera 2 weeks before Thatcher left. Viviana, or someone who wanted us to think it was her. By afternoon, the last of the envelopes were stamped and ready. At the post office, Jasper insisted we use separate lines. We mailed them to Harborstone's Compliance Division, the State Banking Commission, and several advocacy centers for elder fraud victims. Each package carried copies of emails, screenshots, and step-by-step instructions Jasper had written for others to follow. As we drove home, the sky started to darken, even though it was barely 4. I felt the tension in the air, as if the world was holding its breath. That evening, an email arrived from the Banking Commission. The header read, "Case overlap confirmed. Please maintain confidentiality until further notice." Jasper's face lit up. That means they've opened an official investigation. I smiled because he needed me to, but inside I was terrified. Being part of an open case meant we were on someone's radar. When the powerful start to notice you, it's never safe. Later that night, Jasper was checking the shared inbox we used for evidence when a new message slid in. The subject line said, "Let's negotiate." The body read, "Your father is still loyal." Jasper froze. "They're trying to draw us out," he said. He traced the IP address and found it came from a guest network inside Harborstone's building. "That means Dad's still with her," he whispered. "He's helping her cover tracks." I didn't speak. For the first time, I saw not the boy, but the strategist, the quiet precision of someone who understood that justice might require losing someone you love. Before bed, he packed the evidence summary into a single USB and labeled it for Detective Colin Hayes, the financial crimes investigator who'd returned his call that morning. Hayes had said, "If you can give me a verified location, we'll move." Jasper uploaded the final coordinates from the last IP ping. It traced to Seabreeze Motel Route 17, Jacksonville. When I kissed his forehead goodnight, his eyes were still open, reflecting the blue light from the monitor. I didn't know it then, but the next time that address appeared, it would come through a police radio, and the war my grandson started would find its ending. The storm that Monday night came without warning. Rain hammered the windows, and the power flickered twice before settling into a low, humming tension. I sat at the kitchen table reading Jasper's notebook, the one where he'd written every detail in tidy columns. The phone rang, the old landline vibrating against the wood. The screen read, "Thatcher Reed." My hand hovered before I picked up. "Mom," his voice cracked, rushed almost unrecognizable. "Someone's after me. They froze my accounts. Viviana's been fired and the police came to the motel. They're asking questions." My chest went cold. "Where are you?" He hesitated. "Out of town. Route 17. Just until things cool off." Jasper appeared in the doorway, silent eyes alert. He opened his laptop and started typing. I covered the receiver. "He's on," I mouthed. Jasper wrote something on a notepad. "Keep him talking." 5 minutes. I nodded. "Thatcher," I said slowly what happened. He exhaled shakily. "Someone sent all of Viviana's records to her boss. There were names in there, mine, yours. I swear I don't know how they got them. Whoever did it knows everything. It's like they're inside our lives." I glanced at Jasper. His screen displayed a blinking red dot over Seabreeze Motel. He was already transmitting the location to Detective Hayes. Maybe I said softly, "It's just consequences catching up." He sounded desperate. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. We were just moving money temporary. I was going to put it back. And Evelyn Porter," I asked. "And the others you took from Silence, Thick, and Long." "Then how do you even know that name?" "Because she's sitting across my kitchen table every Sunday morning," I said. "Because you didn't just steal from strangers. You stole from people who trusted you, who trusted me." His breathing turned ragged. "Mom, you don't understand. I can fix this. I just need a few days. Viviana has friends who can make it disappear." "Disappear," I said. "Is that what you call it when you erase other people's lives?" Jasper raised one finger, 1 minute left. I steadied my voice. "If you want redemption, Thatcher, stop running." I heard shouting in the background. A man's voice first, then pounding on a door. "Police, open up." The line cracked with noise footsteps, something falling, a muffled curse, then the metallic snap of handcuffs. I heard my son's voice break into a single word, "Mom," and the call cut. The phone fell silent. For a moment, I couldn't move. Jasper kept typing, his face unreadable. The screen showed a notification from Hayes' office, "Subjects in custody. Both safe." I finally found my voice. "What did you do, Jasper?" He didn't look away from the screen. "Nothing illegal," he said. "Just sent the coordinates to the right inbox." I sat down, shaking. The rain had stopped, but the house still hummed with the echo of it. For the first time since Thatcher left, the air felt still. I should have felt relief. Instead, grief pressed against my ribs. My son, the boy I once held through fevers and heartbreaks, was now a line in a police report. And my grandson, the quiet child who used to build robots from scrap, had become the one who ended it. He closed the laptop and poured 2 glasses of water. "It's over, Grandma," he said. I looked at him, really looked, and saw that he wasn't a child anymore. He'd crossed a line none of us could uncross. On the mantel, the cracked photo of Lenore and Thatcher still leaned against the wall. The glass caught the kitchen light in a jagged reflection. "You should replace it," Jasper said. "No," I whispered. "Some cracks should stay to remind us what broke." The next morning, the news anchor's voice filled the living room. Financial advisor Viviana Cross was arrested late last night alongside an unidentified male accomplice at Sea Breeze Motel, Route 17. I turned down the volume and sat in the quiet. Outside, the world looked unchanged. Mail truck children on bicycles, sunlight spilling through oak leaves. But inside, everything had shifted. Justice had been done, but at a cost no one would ever tally on paper. Jasper walked past with his backpack for school. "Grandma," he said, "you can rest now." Maybe he was right. But as I watched him leave, the crack in the photo glinted again, sharp as truth. And I realized rest doesn't come easy when the people you love become both the cause and the cure of your pain. Spring washed the courthouse in a hard white light that made the wood gleam like a church pew. 6 weeks after the motel, I took a seat in the back row of the Chatham County courtroom. Jasper sat beside me in a white shirt and calm I couldn't borrow. Reporters whispered shoes scuffed, and then the door opened. Viviana came in first, wrists, cuffed, face unreadable. Thatcher followed thinner, bruised under the eyes, a man who'd been chasing shortcuts and ran out of road. The prosecutor read the charges clean and spare: identity theft, wire fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy, each word landing with a weight you could measure. Thatcher's attorney leaned into the microphone and painted him as a man out of his depth, manipulated by a seasoned thief. I watched my son's jaw tighten at the word manipulated. If he wanted to be saved by that story, he didn't show it. Then came the evidence. Screens lit with emails that began in our house and echoed through corporate servers. Bank statements, transfer logs, the flagged device ID from our Wi-Fi, the fake portal registration, the call recording from the night a woman told me to stop. Harborstone's internal memo confirming irregularities. The prosecutor asked where the documentation originated. They called me. I walked to the stand and said the truth without softening it. Everything you're looking at was gathered and organized by my grandson. He's 13. The room went still in a way I'll remember when I can't remember other things. Thatcher stared at the table, then lifted his eyes to me and said small for the first time since he was 10, I didn't know he saw that much. Under pressure, Viviana's confidence cracked. She admitted her name wasn't the only one on the inside. Money had moved to a system Harborstone didn't want to admit existed. Hands had been greased, and one administrator had taken payment to look away. The judge's face didn't change, but the room shifted. This wasn't just a bad advisor gone rogue. The prosecutor rolled the doorbell footage from Mrs. Bonner's porch camera Viviana at my steps, 2 weeks before Thatcher left an envelope in her hand, the long look she gave our windows. Premeditation had a face. Thatcher's lawyer tried one last angle and ended up telling a truth anyway. Some of the stolen money had been parked in a Florida fund under a borrowed name. It was Jasper who traced it and helped freeze it in time for law enforcement to reach it. The prosecutor acknowledged that help on the record. Jasper didn't smile. He only pressed his palms together like he was lining up two edges of paper. Before the judge retired to deliberate, the prosecutor offered a path that wasn't mercy but math. If Thatcher cooperated fully, names methods, the routes the money took, he would receive consideration at sentencing. He nodded. Jasper leaned toward me and whispered, "Not forgiveness, just repair." I looked at my son through the glass of everything that had broken between us. The anger had burned away. Only the grief for the boy he had been stayed. The gavel came down. Sentences were spoken in the same steady voice that had read the charges. Viviana Cross, 8 years in federal prison. Thatcher Reed, 5 years with credit for cooperation. When the deputies turned him, he found me. "Mom." "I'm sorry," he said, and the words arrived too late to be useful. I didn't answer. Outside, the rain that had gathered all morning finally stopped, and light spilled through the courthouse panes like it had been waiting. I told myself quietly what I needed to keep moving the storm past, but the house still needs rebuilding. 2 days later, a letter from the district attorney's office arrived titled Restitution Payment Listing $18,400 from Viviana's Liquidated Assets. Jasper enrolled in an online course in financial crime investigation and stacked the textbooks on his dresser like bricks. I put the cracked photo of Lenore back on the mantel without new glass. Some damage deserves to be remembered. 6 months later, the new house in South Savannah smelled like fresh paint and lavender. No grandfather clock, no echoing hall, just a small kitchen that caught afternoon sun and a yard where the river wind carried salt. Jasper's laptop clicked softly at one end of the table. My red pen moved at the other. When the mail came there, it was an official envelope stamped with the state seal. Restitution payment. The letter read $18,400. I held the paper the way people hold newborns careful, stunned aware of how much it cannot fix. Jasper set his computer aside and explained what the numbers meant. 17 other victims had received partial reimbursements. 2 families were made whole because intervention came before the last transfer. He opened a browser and showed me the site he'd been building in the evenings. Family Financial Protection Services, plain fonts, clear promises, a page of resources written in language anyone could understand. At the bottom, his name with a certification he'd earned after weeks of study, Certified Financial Crime Prevention Specialist. He turned the screen so I could see the testimonials, short notes from people who had stopped bleeding because a boy taught them where to look. I took a substitute job at my old high school 2 mornings a week, enough to remind my hands how to write names on a roll sheet and my voice how to call a room to attention. It felt like returning a borrowed piece of myself. The phone rang one afternoon while I was sorting essays. The caller ID displayed Chatham County Correctional Facility. I watched the screen and heard Jasper's voice in my head about boundaries, about how forgiveness isn't a door you fling open because someone knocks. I let it ring out. I turned the phone off, not out of hate, out of a kind of love that refuses to be used. Minutes later, Jasper's email chimed. A note from a detective thanked him for his assistance and said Harborstone had reopened a dormant branch of the investigation. Additional suspects were now in focus. They asked whether he would consult informally on tracing methods. He nodded to himself, not triumphant, just settled. "It's not done," he said. "It probably never is." I looked at him and thought of the first night, of how the house had been too loud to sleep, and of how he'd made a rhythm out of it. That evening, I stood in his doorway while he spoke on a video call with a family in Oregon whose teenage son had taken his grandmother's checks. He walked them through the steps, calmly freeze report document, recover, never condescending, never grand. When he finished, I asked the question I had been saving. "Are you happy?" He thought for a long breath. "I don't know what happy is yet," he said, "but I feel right." I smiled. Sometimes right is enough. I hung the photo of Lenore in our new living room, the cracked glass still in place, and tucked a copy of the bank statement that once read $12 into a small box of keepsakes. I brought the old clock pendulum with me too, but I didn't wind it. Some noises I don't need anymore. On our last morning in the old house, we'd eaten breakfast in the dark before the sun. Now we eat with light on our hands and the sound of the river in the trees. The day Thatcher left, I thought something had ended. It took me a while to understand it was something beginning, justice finding its way through a pair of small, steady hands. Grandma Jasper called from the other room. "We've got another family asking for help." I capped my pen and stood. There are people born to mend what the rest of us break. The world keeps its balance because they keep showing up.